friends. Welcome to the Creative Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Caldwell, and I'm so happy you're here. Each episode, I take some time to chat with fellow artists about life, faith, and the impact of the arts. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining me on the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we are in our final episode of the Belhaven Dance Alumni Series, where we're celebrating 30 years of dance at Belhaven, and we're kind of overflowing into into their 31st year a little bit. But there are just so many incredible alumni from the dance department, and we could probably do multiple seasons of this series, so I may bring it back at some point and do some more. Definitely excited to have you here, Jill. This is so fun to have you as kind of our finale of this series. Jill is the very first graduate, or in the very first class of graduates from Belhaven Dance Department. So exciting. And yeah, do you want to share with us just a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I think I'd like to start with how I found out about Belhaven.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very tiny town in South Carolina, and we did not have very many dance resources there. And when I was in junior high, we lived sort of close to Charlotte, North Carolina, and my parents were really good about seeking out opportunities for us. And she eventually moved us to Charlotte so that we could have more dance opportunities. And I say us because I am one of three sisters. And it was like Andy Leatherman reminded me when we were at Project Dance that he knew my two sisters before he knew me. And
Really?
we
That's so
all three
cool.
danced. Yes.
Oh, you all three danced. That's incredible.
My middle sister, her name was Leela, and she actually went to SMU for her dance degree.
Okay,
And she
so came to
danced.
Texas, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she danced for Bill Wade in Inlet for a long, long time. And that's
Cool.
where we met Andy, obviously there the first time.
That makes sense. Okay,
Yes.
I love all the connections in the dance world. I was reminded of that at Project Dance this weekend too. Just
It's really
what a small world
world.
it really is. Yes.
Yeah. And because there were three of us, and my sister and I look a lot alike, between the three of us, it was a small world, and we did meet a lot of people. So even if we hadn't met somebody, they generally knew one of us, if that kind of makes sense. And so my mom was very gracious in trying to get us, even though I was kind of a late start as far as really pursuing dance. My mom tried to get us really good opportunities. And I was so funny. I was cleaning out my closets the other day, and I found what does he call it? The last testament you do in high school. And I was shocked because when I read it, it had nothing about dance in it. And it was like when I was reading it, it was very clear that I was not going to pursue dance. I had wanted to do another major altogether. But I think that as I look through the different lenses you can look through as you look in the past, I think the biggest one for me is I'm the definition of a Gen Xer. You can't get really more Gen X than me. And what I mean by that is that the world was totally different back then. And I think that when I talk to people nowadays, I think that they remember that and they don't remember that. I talked to some friends at Project Dance about this too, about how when we communicate with um, younger people who don't remember that time in history, they kind of look at us with point of blank stares. And so I guess from that time growing up, obviously we didn't have the internet, we didn't have any of those things, no cell phones. And I was really blessed. I don't know if you've ever been on the website tutu.com, but
No, I
Claudia
haven't.
Foltz McCure, she was from Harkness Ballet. They have a lot of tutu schools, so they teach people how to make tutus. And I was blessed that she was my dance teacher in high school. And
Very
she comes to
cool.
IDC every year. And so she was a very generous and very loving person. I think as I became older, I really wanted to make my studio, when I ran a studio, to be like hers because she was so loving and so kind and so accepting. But I guess by the time I graduated, I didn't I I wanted to go to a large university in the North, and, I didn't really want to go Southern, and I didn't wanna go private, and I also think I didn't have a lot of people directing me either. Like, I think, it was like, we didn't really have the internet to research things, so things just came in the
Yeah.
mail, and that's what you sent off. And, a lady from my dance studio knew I was graduating, and she walked up to me, and she handed me this piece of paper to Belhaven, and it was a one-page printout. That's it, just one page. And she said, "I heard if you go to this school that you can take classes from Valley Magnificat." And
Yeah.
so I did, so I applied to 9 large universities in the North, and then after I'd done that, she handed me this, and I wanna say the application was $25, and it was one page, and so I filled out my name and my address and my grade scores, and I sent it in, and, it came back that, I think on my scores, I had gotten a full ride, and,
That's
um
awesome.
yeah, and I was kind of in shock, and at that time, my dad, he had lost his job, and so I really wanted to not go to Mississippi. Like, I had just done that because it was $25 and fast and cheap. I wasn't serious. But
Right.
once my dad lost his job, my parents were very serious, and they were like, "You are going to Mississippi." And I can remember asking them, "Have you ever been to Mississippi?" And they were like, "Nope." And, but I think at that time it was like you're going to college, be happy. And it turned out to be the best thing, one of the best things that ever happened in my whole life. And they did drive me down to Mississippi and put me there.
Yeah.
I did have a lot of culture shock at first, but Belhaven just became a place of safety and a place of security. And like Krista likes to say, a beautiful home, because that's what Belhaven means. And
Yes, I loved her saying that. I was like, "Oh, that's true."
yes,
I kind of I don't know if I had heard that before and just forgot, but it definitely hit me when she said that this weekend. Yeah.
and it's absolutely true what she said, because even 30 years later, when I go back to Belhaven, I still feel like I'm going home. Like, it's still a place of safety and networking and friendship and, fellow workers working
Yes.
together for a goal. And, so I got to Belhaven and I started taking classes at Valley Magnificat, and you would get college credit for that. And they also had, what they called Ballet Magnificat 2 at that time. You know how it was their version, their first version of having 2 companies, sort of
I
thing.
see.
And
Okay.
so we got to, dance with that. We would practice on Saturdays, and that's how I met the Cadles, Michael and Mary Cadle and Rick and Rose
Cool.
Fauché, and they
Okay.
were the ones that were in charge of that at first. And then, so that was great because we got to learn and perform and do, like, local things. Rick Fauché taught me how to roll out Marley and, things
A
like
great
that.
life skill as a dancer, yes.
"How to lay a Marley, you must know." And I wanna say, so I did that for my freshman year and my sophomore year, and then, also Laurie Worrell Biggs was teaching there at the time. And, I guess sometime in there, they decided that they wanted to separate the Belhaven program and make it more Belhaven, or I guess, I don't know, maybe Belhaven was ready to hire people outside.
Right.
But and I imagine, I mean, there weren't a whole lot of us there at the time, so I don't know, you know, what their long-term vision for that was. But what seemed to happen to me is that the Cadles and Laurie Whirlbix found Mike Aronson, and so he started visiting. And then I think that they hired Mark to be the head of the department, and then I think Mark hired Lori, and so Mrs. Biggs, she changed over to Belhaven. So my last 2 years at Belhaven, my teachers, outside of guest teachers, were Laurie Whirlbiggs for ballet and Mark Aronson for the modern part. So, I really only had 2 years of modern and contemporary in getting my degree. And so
Okay.
I had wonderful experiences and I learned a lot. I'm not quite as strong in that as I am, as far as the ballet, just because I studied that more. Um,
Right.
I just can't say enough about how even though the program was so small and we were guinea pigs and we tried all kinds of new things, it was still a great experience. And I think that something that is hard to understand when you're little is that, or little young, this is a real important concept to me that the world is changing so fast as a Gen Xer looking at things that if you're in college right now, you are absorbing and you are learning and you're going to use that information. You will use it multiple times. You will recycle it over and over and over again in your life. But things are also changing so fast in the dance world in any part of the world that as important as it is to learn that information and to recycle it, you also have to realize that things are changing and you have to adapt it and be flexible. Because in some ways, it is true that by the time you graduate, what you know is already out of style, out of fashion, out of time.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
so, really, I think the surprising thing is that, after you've been trained, after you've had your education, after you've started your career, you're kind of already, um, you're already having like obsolete is a terrible word. You're definitely not obsolete, but the world you trained for is obsolete. And the world is changing, and you have to change yourself to get ready for the next iteration of whatever reality looks like. And
That's
that
good.
was a huge thing for me as a Gen Xer because I really feel pulled between 2 worlds. I remember a world that does not exist anymore, and I live in a world that I had no idea ever would exist. And
Yeah.
it's hard, like, remembering my first CD, remembering my first cell phone. I actually got my first email the week I graduated from Belhaven. My
Really?
first email address, and I was like, "This is fun, but who would ever use this?" I was
Yeah.
like, "This is not a practical thing." And I can remember the first time I texted, and I thought the same thing, "This is not practical. Nobody will ever use text." And, just to see how fast our world has changed and how that has affected the dance world too, it's almost unfathomable to me how much things change and how quickly they change.
Yes, it is wild to think about. Even for me, I'm kind of in mid to late millennial, I guess, that age range. And yeah, even for me, I remember kind of those a little bit of those pre-internet, basically pre-internet days, or definitely to like floppy disks and cassette tapes and things like that. But it is wild how much has changed.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that it's kind of strange for me to sort of talk about the past because the past that I knew doesn't exist. The Belhaven that I knew is gone. And I don't think
Right.
anybody really remembers it, and it was a really precious, precious place, and it's absolutely amazing now. It's good that it's gone, because things grow, things change, things get bigger. But, Harrison Scott Key, he's one of, the famous authors from Belhaven or more prominent ones, and, I read
Yeah.
in his book one time that he called it an awkward time in Belhaven's history when we were there, and
Really?
yeah, it was precious and awkward at the same time, and I feel like he really nailed it because, there was just a lot of growing pains going on during those 4 years, and we made the most that we could out of anything that we could get our hands on, and now it's completely, totally different than when I was
Yes.
there, and it's beautiful. I mean, I'm just so happy for what anytime you have a beautiful flowering bush, it started somewhere as a seed. And so what I
Yes.
remember is the seed part, and now I'm just amazed at the flowering.
Yes. Such a good picture and analogy of, there has to be that foundation or that seed that's planted, and then getting to be part of the first little sprouts, of growth. And and probably in a lot of creative ways, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, I totally agree. I feel like, maybe one of the best things that we learn in college, or in like the educational system as a whole is how to continue learning, and to continue growing and learning from our peers and things like that and those that have gone before us as we continue to grow beyond college. So I think that's such a good picture of how things were and then how that's kind of prepared you and also maybe was an interesting journey, going from Belhaven on.
Yes. So I think that, like, when I was a freshman and a sophomore, I liked Belhaven because they had so many different majors to choose from, and I didn't know what my calling is. Back then, before the internet, the world was much smaller, and, the people that have the information are the people that have the resources. And since there wasn't a lot of information, there weren't a lot of options necessarily. At that time, I didn't have a whole lot of agency in my life to know who I was or what I wanted, and I never could, pick a major, and but I had kept taking dance classes, and so I was kinda had a dance minor, I guess, and
Yeah.
finally, my junior year, I decided to major in biblical studies. I was interested in missions, and so I chose that as my major, and then that exact same time is when Belhaven more separated from Ballet Mag, and so then I had all of these dance options too, and so I was like, "Well, I'm gonna try to double major. I'm gonna try to pursue my missions, biblical studies, cross cultural communications, and also, you know, take advantage of these new dance classes that are now offered to me." And so I ended up ultimately majoring in both because
Wow, that's so cool.
it was kind of a default for me. I knew I loved
Yes,
art and I knew I loved dance, and I really didn't know anything else about myself.
that makes
So,
sense. That's so cool though to probably were you the first double major? Like dance major that was also a double major maybe then?
I was the first when we were there, they didn't offer the BFA, they only had the BA. It was just me in my class. So I was the only person that graduated then, and I graduated with a double major because I didn't know what I was doing, and so I tried to do everything.
That's incredible. I love it. Yes. So, as you think back to that time, those years, are there any favorite stories or memories that come to mind that you want to share?
Yes. Um, my favorite, like, memory of being a student is they used to let us have parties in the fountain in Fitzhugh, and we
Really?
would
That's
have,
awesome.
yeah, we would have dances in the fountain, and,
That's
I
too
even
cool.
saw crazy people drive their bikes up ramps and into the fountain and things like that, that that now that there's probably cameras, people wouldn't do anymore.
Right.
Um And, I'm trying to think what else we did that was fun. Since I live so far away, I, stayed on campus during the weekends, and I really enjoyed, the group of students that couldn't go home on the weekends. I really enjoyed kind of living my life, seeing them, um, you kinda sorta create your own family, and as far
Yeah.
as dance goes, like, at first they would say, "Okay, we're gonna do this dance, and I'm gonna go buy this for a costume, and we'll have the costumes made." And, like, probably the first 2 performances where that had happened, the costumes were never made, and so we would just dance in a black leotard and a black skirt, and so eventually we realized that, there just was too much work going around and not enough people to do the work, and that if we wanted a costume, we were gonna have to make that costume ourselves. And so that
Gotcha.
was
Yeah.
very interesting coming to that conclusion, and then, like, the 8 of us looking at each other and going, "Well, who can sew?" And, so that was actually very important in my life because we were forced to figure out how to sew dance costumes, and um, simply because we did not wanna wear a black leotard for the next concert, and it was such an important skill that I have used over and over and over again, and I'm still using today, is how to sew dance costumes. So I
Mhm.
never intended to learn about costuming or sewing costumes, but that was a perk. And,
Yes.
we also, um there were problems with the stage, there were problems with the auditorium. Most people don't even I was even thinking about this last night. Do you know underneath that auditorium in that building that doesn't exist anymore, there was a pool, an indoor pool.
Really?
Yes. Now that indoor pool was already, it was already not working, so it had,
Okay.
like, boxed off. But I can remember going to Belhaven and hearing stories about when the pool did work. And, anyway, that whole building is gone now, but, for whatever reason, we built an interlocking stage. And when I
Okay.
say men did most of the work and then we, like, just followed them, but we would take a whole day to build the stage and put the marley down and set up the lights, and, it was a a different way. I'm sure that they don't do that in production class nowadays. I guess what I'm saying is
Yeah.
my costuming class was probably different from today's costuming class, and my production class was probably very different from the production class they offer today, but it was more than enough. We
Yeah.
learned, what we needed to learn for the rest of the rest of our I do wish I knew a little bit more about lighting, than I do know. That's one thing that I wish I had a little more opportunity, but I know so much about costuming and,
Yeah.
so
That's
much about the
awesome.
routines. Yeah. So God really He answered our prayers. He taught us what we needed to know to use later on.
I
And so
love that
my Belhaven trip
resourcefulness that you built, through that time.
mhm. Is di If you wanted to say, "Did I use what I learned at Belhaven?" Absolutely, over and over and over again. Did it prepare me for what God had for me? Yes. Now that world doesn't exist anymore. We're in a new world, so I'm sure Belhaven kids are prepared differently for their new world. But,
Yeah.
it's great.
That makes sense. Yes, that's so cool, and I love just already you've shared so many different things that have been really vital lessons that you've learned through that time and have taken into your life, but are there any other ones that stand out to you that you'd wanna share?
Yeah, so I had a really unique opportunity there. So we the first 2 years we took all our classes at Belhaven, and I'm not at Belhaven, at Ballymag, and we actually continued to do that because we didn't have a studio. Um,
Okay.
there was a studio on Belhaven. It's the little one that I think is a weight room now, and,
Mhm. Kind of up above the gym area, like, in that building?
yes, and that studio was actually the original one that Ballymag started practicing in, which is how Ballymag and Belhaven connected, but that was, like, way before me even, and
Okay.
so at the time I was there, they were renting it out to a teacher named Lisa Howell, who used to teach for Ballet Mississippi, and she was an RAD instructor, and so she
Yeah.
had a small school there, so, I had come from an RAD background from one of my teachers, and so I recognized the little girls in their RAD uniforms going into there to take lessons. And so while we were at Valley Mag, I went to go meet the lady, and she was so sweet. She would let me study RAD with her, and I was able to pass two of my exams. We would get up at 5 in the morning, and she had like a early morning class for her older dancers, and I would roll out of bed, take ballet at 5:30 to 6:45, come home, eat breakfast, and then go to our next class, and I think that is was something that was really, another perk that you don't expect to go to college. So I kinda got to study with do the Bell do the Belhaven thing, the Ballet Mag thing, and the RAD thing. And anyway, eventually, by the time I was a junior, Belhaven did not rent that studio. Well, Belhaven, I don't know, but Belhaven had reclaimed that. And so
Okay.
we
Yeah.
we had our modern classes in that studio, but we still had our ballet classes at Ballymag. And then the
Ah,
year after I left is when they built the first new big studio. So I actually never took class in that big one. Now they
yeah.
have
Right, now they have the, like,
Mhm.
massive Fitzy Irby, which is so beautiful with all the windows and
Yeah.
yeah, so
So
special.
we got to clean that studio, we made that studio, we went in there with our mops and our brooms. That was kind of our if we wanted it to happen, we walked in there and we made it happen, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, for sure. That is so cool, and I loved this past school year when they did the reunion for all the Belhaven alum. It was so fun. That was where we first met and got to say hello and hear you speak on an alumni panel, which was so fun. Just hearing everyone's experiences kind of through the years. But yeah, what was neat was the connection. So I know you and my husband Ben knew each other before, I guess, was it after Belhaven for you that you met Ben?
Yes, yes. So, when I graduated from Belhaven, there was a lady named Stacy Lee who ran the lower division for Ballet Magnificat, and she had her own program called Jackson Ballet Academy.
Okay.
Laurie Biggs also taught for her, and teaching methods is another huge strength that I got from Belhaven.
Yeah.
Laurie was really big in Vaganova, so I learned a lot from her, and Stacy taught me how to teach little ones. And so I really learned how to teach ballet in a fun way. So my first year out of school, I stayed in Jackson because we knew that a dam was starting. And so I was kind of waiting for that to happen and also trying to save my money. So I worked at Dance Fantasy, which was the dance store there. And then I also
Cool.
taught for Stacy, and then the second year I made the move to Houston to dance for Audeum, and I met
Yes.
Laura Morton there, and, um yes, yes, and I stayed there for a year, and, while I was in at Audeum, we had danced the Messiah Project, Dance with the Messiah Project in Poland and Austria. And so I had learned that choreography, and then I ended up going back to Mississippi and, starting a school there. And the next year, I think Audeum could not go on the Messiah project, and so they had gotten a different group of dancers together, and somebody called me and was like, "Do you wanna go on this one?" And I was like, "Absolutely." I had the best time the last time. And so we went to Japan, I think, for 2 weeks, and I met your husband, Ben, who was wonderful. We had so much fun, and I also met Elizabeth Sweat and, there,
Yes.
and that was, another huge part of my life. You know, the dance world is so small, the network is everything, and these people that you meet, they come in and out of your life over and over again like a tapestry. I call it the Belhaven tapestry, and,
Yes.
you know, that even 30 years from now, I still just came back from Jackson where I saw Elizabeth and Andy, and, now I'm talking to you in relationship to Ben, and,
Yeah,
it's
so
really
cool.
good.
I love that tapestry and those connections, and okay, I don't know if it'll show up very well. I didn't have it pulled up, but I was gonna try to show on there this picture,
Yes,
if you can see it, of you guys. So is
I
this in Japan?
that is in Japan. That is me in the gold, and, I think, there's Ben and Elizabeth next to Ben and Kyrie and Elizabeth's sisters, and,
Yeah, so I tap
we
it so
just
it's
had we were at a beautiful church then. They had live choir, and, it was one of the best experiences of my life getting to travel like that.
so incredible and so fun, and I know he speaks super highly of you as well, so I love just all the friends and connections that happen. I think that's one of the most special parts of being involved in the dance world is the relationships, and the friendships that form, like you said, just that's everything is those connections and those relationships.
And
Yeah.
with that Messiah project, it has come back into my life 3 more times since then. Just 2 Easters ago, Elizabeth came and brought Belhaven dancers to do the Messiah project on the coast with the church I was working with. And so
Really?
30 years later, we are still recycling and still using the stuff we learned when we were our 20s. Now I'm closer to 50, and I'm still using those opportunities that God gave us.
Yeah. So as you think back on some of those trips and those experiences getting to travel internationally, how do you feel like that maybe impacted your perspective just in life and as a dancer and teacher?
Well, you have to remember that we didn't have internet. And so it was amazing to do that. I think I got to go to the Philippines for 2 weeks and got to lead some dance classes there and, do some different performances there. I got to go to Hong Kong. That was crazy. And it was right in the part where things were being handed over government-wise. So, I mean, the Philippines was a huge experience. China was a huge experience. Hong Kong was a huge experience. Um, Austria and Poland were huge. So was Japan. I just think that it showed me how diversified the Christian faith is. And, you might be taught that this is one way to be a Christian, but when you visit so many different countries, you learn that there are so many different ways to be a Christian. And now I think people don't have to necessarily go to other countries to see that because they can see it on the internet.
Mhm.
But back then, there was kind of like one way to be a Christian. And really seeing that that's not true. That really there are so many different expressions of our faith and of our love for Jesus throughout the world. That was a real freeing thing for me. I realized that, there were a lot more possibilities out there and a lot different ways to use your gifts, to praise the Lord, to really lifestyles, different ways that you didn't all have to look the same. You don't all have to be cookie cutters. You can be yourself. You can be unique. You can be individual. And that God actually made you that way. He made us to
Yeah.
be different from each other. It
So true.
was awesome.
That is so, so cool. I love just getting to hear a little bit about that experience, and I also love that you have the connection to Adayam as well, kind of in those years after college, and that's a fun commonality for us too, is being part of the Adayam community at different points, and I feel like that's been a real kind of like safe haven community as well for dancers to come through, receive more training, get that, also be able to perform and be part of the community. And so many of them have
So
gone
much.
and started, you know, different companies or programs around the world, you
Yes.
know? Yeah, so
That
cool.
was a huge learning opportunity. I have a son who is 21 right now, and he's in college. So I'm just thinking in terms of college kids and then going at Project Dance and talking to some of the seniors there. Um, when you graduate with your bachelor's, you can go get your master's or your doctorate or, continue your education. But even if you don't do that, you still have another 4 years of education. You get like a master's from life the first 4 years
Yes.
after you get out of school.
That is
Like
such a good way to say it. Yes.
that age from 22 to 26, you're going to get a master's whether you want a master's of life, whether you want one or not.
Yep.
And, that's really what I felt like telling my son and telling those girls, that were about to graduate is you are gonna make it through the next 4 years, and they are gonna be hard, just as hard as if you are still in school, but you will make it through there and, hold on if things don't happen immediately. God has his own sense of timing, and I really believe I think at that time, people kinda pushed like you had one calling in life, and I really feel like we have multiple callings in life. We go through this stage of our life, and God calls us here. We go through this stage of our life, and God calls us here. And, don't limit yourself. Don't limit God. Let him do what he wants to do. You do what you wanna do. You know, don't think that it has to look a certain way, it has to be a certain way. Um, God likes it all to be different. Go with your different, you know,
Yes.
and don't
So
panic
good.
those first 4 years.
Right. That is such good wisdom. So every student that's listening out there, it's such a good point just to remember you're going to make it, and one day at a time, one year at a time, and that we continue to learn and grow. And that kind of takes me back to, so you were graduated, got to experience that DM and a lot of that travel, and we're back in Mississippi.
Yeah.
So do you want to share about when you started your school and kind of what that journey was like?
When I had worked for, Stacy Lee at the Jackson Ballet Academy, her school was part of a church there called Horizon, I think.
Cool.
Her
Okay.
husband at the time was one of the pastors there. Yeah, and, so I did not have a lot of resources. In other words, I didn't have enough money to rent a building, and I didn't have enough money to start a business, okay?
Yeah.
And so had the opportunity to get my first studio at a Presbyterian church in Kosciuszko that really
Cool.
believed in the arts. Yes, and so I started that the first year I graduated, and then I let it go the year I was in Houston, and then when I came back, I was able to pick that back up again, and
Okay.
from that experience, I learned that it's really good to be your own boss, because you have more freedom, n uh, you can get your when you're teaching for somebody else, there's really only so much that they can pay you, and,
Mm.
it helps to be able to have your own thing, and, so I did that for 4 more years. So I had the school there for 6 years, 5 of them, were when I ran it, and so I think too, like, the first year I was back, I went to Houston, and then I came back, and I thought briefly I would try to move back to North Carolina in Charlotte and, looked into a job there, and then realized that my network was really bigger in Mississippi now, and I actually had been in Mississippi long enough that I had a larger network and more support there. So
That makes
I
sense.
accepted a job in North Carolina and then unaccepted it and moved back to, Mississippi
Okay.
one summer. And, at
Yeah.
that point in time, I think this was probably 3 years after I graduated. I was probably 26 and 25 or 26. I can remember saying, "I'm about to turn 26 because I was trying to make myself look older and have more experience.
Right.
I had met a lady at church who was running, a ballet school in Laurel, and she was, not being able to direct that school anymore, and so I went and had an interview, actually with Leah Rowland's mother.
Really?
Yes.
That's such a
Uh,
cool connection too. So
isn't
fun.
that amazing? Yeah,
Yeah.
and, so I was able to take over that studio, but the long and short of this story is very interesting. When I was planning to go to Audeum, Keith Thibodeau had called me and said, "We're planning to do a satellite school in Laurel. Are you interested in teaching there?" And I said, "No, I am going to go to Houston." And so he had hired Anastasia, who was in the Ballet Mag 2 with us to do it. She was a good friend and, she ran it for a year, and then it was passed on to this friend I met at church who ran it for a year, and then I ultimately got it back after
Wow. That's
because when
cool.
she left, then I actually so really Keith was, prophetic in calling me the first time because I did end up with that studio, um,
Yeah.
so Ballet Mag had it for a year, and then Larita Cole was my friend. She actually works at Ballet Mac right now, and
Oh,
she,
cool.
had it for a year, and then she changed some paths, and, so I started and I named it just like Stacey Lee's studio. It was Jackson Ballet Academy, so I named it Laurel Ballet Academy.
Love
Um,
it. Yeah.
yes, and so that was kind of my biggest school. I eventually let go of the Kosciuszko one, and then I also worked with a church in Hattiesburg and had a sort of a second Laurel Ballet Academy in Hattiesburg for probably about 7 years. But
Okay.
altogether, I think I taught 18 and I ran Laurel Ballet Academy for 15 years. And my goal with that was really grace. You know, I knew from the moment that that school began, and it was kind of the same situation too. Our building was owned by a church, so because all the buildings were owned by churches that I generally worked with, we obviously had a spiritual Christian viewpoint that was
Mhm.
solid. And,
Yeah.
and then my husband got a job in 2017 on the coast, and it meant we had to move, and I was kind of grateful because I had had a daughter, and I was really struggling with the whole working full time and taking care of your family thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so I sold my school to Elizabeth. So I think I ran Laurel Ballet for 15 years, and I think Elizabeth did for maybe 4 years, and now Hannah May runs it, and,
Okay.
I'm very happy about that. I'm grateful for that because I feel like that was my blood, that was my sweat, that was my tears. I feel like I kinda gave my life for that, and for
Mhm.
I think next year will be their 25th anniversary. And so to be
So
able to
cool.
celebrate that, so that's why I call myself the grandma. I'm the grandma of Belhaven because,
Yeah,
like I've lived long enough that there's multiple generations that have taken over since me.
right. Yeah,
Um,
you can see that continuing
yeah,
legacy and kind of people continuing to build on those tears, that sweat and tears that, that you've worked
yes.
towards, and then them continuing to go from there is that's so cool. It's so beautiful.
And then obviously, Leah Martin Rowland being able to train her at Laurel Ballet, and then she went to Belhaven, and then, of course, Elizabeth Sweat, she had lots of influence there. I mean, I don't even know how many Laurel Ballet people have gone to, go on and study at Belhaven, but it feels like it we didn't intend to do that, but it's what happened, and it's beautiful.
Yes, so neat. I love that. So now since moving to the coast, I guess what has life looked like for you in these past, I guess now it's about 8 years? Something
Yes.
like that, which is
Yes.
hard to believe. Ooh, 2017 doesn't feel like 8 years ago, but that's okay.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that for me personally, without the internet, without outside influences, I think I could probably did not develop the advocacy and the agency as early as I needed to in my life. I think that I was probably in my 20s still operating in some ways emotionally like a teenager. And I did not get married until I was 35. And I had my daughter when I was 37. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of late. But so I kind of gave all my early years to dance. And then once I had a family, I was like, this is, really what my heart has always longed for. For different reasons, I came out of that pregnancy sick. And I had never been sick before. As dancers, we tell our bodies what to do and they obey us.
Right?
I master my body. I tell it how many pirouettes it will do. It doesn't tell me. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
And
yes.
or it's supposed to go that way. In my head,
That's
that's
how
how it
we
is.
view it. Yes, for sure.
Right. And it was a real shock to me to find out that I could not tell my body how to have a baby or
Uh,
when to have a baby or how that would be going. And, I also had some problems and I had developed some tumors that I had gone to a lot of doctors and I, couldn't get a good diagnosis, and the end result was that I had by the time I left Laurel, I was almost too sick to still teach, and,
mm,
so since I've been to the coast, it's really been 8 years of healing for me. I've had 4 different abdominal surgeries, and I've learned so much about health advocacy and how important finding the right doctor is, how important insurance is, how important, again, another plus of the internet is that really you can research your own conditions. They have these things on Facebook now, these Facebook groups, where I can go on there and find the same people that had what I have, but they are from all over the world. So I know what doctors in England do. I know what doctors in India do. I know what doctors, and I mean, like, that's just unprecedented, you know?
it's yeah, so mind-blowing, honestly, to think about,
Yeah.
and so helpful to have people that understand what you're walking through, and then also, okay, I don't have to just rely on this one perspective of treatment or, that kind of thing, and seeing that there's more options because I imagine something like that probably could feel very, overwhelming and, it's scary
It
when we're
plays
dealing
with
with
your
health stuff.
mind.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
played with my mind because I had been to so many doctors going, "I think there's something the matter with me." And after I'm kind of a sensitive person, and after 4 people tell me, "Jill, like, you're just heavy, it's in your mind," you know, you believe that. And so for 2
Mm,
years, I didn't go to any doctors at all, and I can remember my husband coming up to me and going, like, "Your belly is hard as a rock." You know what I mean? Like, after 2 years of telling myself there's nothing the matter with me, and then, like, having to face reality, like, "My belly is hard as a rock. Maybe I should try this again," you know?
right.
It really messes with you mentally, and I think that's really how I became a big fan of therapy, Like, I love
Yeah.
my therapist just having to there's different times in life where people might not mean to gaslight you, but you end up gaslighted, and you have to figure out what is real and what is not real. And while that should be a very simple thing, sometimes it's really not. It's complicated. And especially as a Gen Xer, in our old world, we wanted everything black and white. And the reality is that we don't really have that privilege anymore.
Mm.
Um, and it's a good thing we don't have it. There are shades of complexity, there are shades of gray, and I think as Christians, we really like to either stay in our black and white, good and evil, right and wrong things. But really, in our modern world, there are a lot of shades of gray. And I feel like as Christians, we have to get comfortable with that. We have to
Mhm.
understand that we can still follow Christ and still acknowledge the shades of gray and
Yes.
wrestle with that. That's so important to not try to oversimplify things, to as Christians to be okay with them being complex and to be okay with not having answers and to be okay with not knowing. The
Mm. Yeah, that's
mystery
tough.
is very important, and I don't remember how I got off on that, but basically, the 8 years since I've left Law Ballet Academy have been me having surgery and rebuilding myself back together and being a mom. I feel like my 20s were really hard because I didn't know what I was doing. I feel like my 30s were awful because I felt like I was out of control. And then I feel like during my 40s, God kind of put me back together. And now I'm,
Mm.
my 50s, and I'm very excited. I think for the first time in my life, like things have come together where my mind is healthy, my body is healthy, God has restored, things that I thought I would never get back. And, so I don't really know what the future's gonna look like. I've been mostly just concentrating on my daughter.
Ah, and she is so sweet. It was so fun. So we just this past weekend, I know we've referenced it a couple of times, but we got to see each other at Project Dance Jackson, the very first Project Dance Jackson, which is so cool. But I got to meet your daughter, and she is so sweet. Yeah,
Yeah.
loved getting to just say hello.
And, even talking about Project Dance being part of the tapestry, when I was teaching in Hattiesburg in 2007, that was my first time to go to Project Dance New York, and I took 20 kids from Laurel.
That's incredible.
Me and another teacher who I worked for. We took, I think, 12 kids from her studio and 7 kids from my studio. And then
Hey,
in 2015, when Kate had just been born, she was only 1, we took the Laurel girls to, Project Dance Houston.
oh,
Yeah, and so that was amazing too. I have a onesie, like, Kate literally had a Project Dance onesie, and
that
so
is
I
so
thought,
sweet.
"Well, I have a picture of her there in her Project Dance onesie." So it was really exciting to me to get to revisit that tapestry and do Project Dance Jackson with her
Right.
even.
Very full circle. I feel like that moment, getting to be there. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I feel like there's so much we could unpack with your journey in this season. Any thoughts or words of advice for all of us on just maintaining like mental, physical, emotional health, spiritual health, all the things as you've kind of journeyed through this process physically, but I'm sure also emotionally and mentally, spiritually? What have you found? What discoveries and any words of wisdom that you want to share with us?
Right, right. I think once again, as my Gen X are holding on to the old part of the world, we had the word healing then. We knew we wanted healing. We did not have the word trauma in our vocabularies, and we didn't understand that concept. Now we're blessed in our modern times to have a better understanding of what trauma is and how it affects us. We have even the definition of healing has changed in a lot of ways. We have
Yeah.
a more diversity in ways to pursue that. And I'm a big believer in therapy and in going to a counselor because I really think I know you can heal yourself, but you can heal so much faster when you have somebody objectively working on it with you.
Mm,
And
that's so good. Yeah.
I look, my insides were broken. And if my insides hadn't been so broken, I might have made different decisions with my life. And I don't regret any of the decisions I made because I'm very happy with the life that the Lord's given me. But I think it's a important focus for me, especially with my child now, is to go ahead and deal with that trauma or the bad things that happened to us or the things that hurt us now. Because if you don't deal with it in your 20s, you're gonna deal with it in your 30s. If you don't deal with it in your 30s, you can deal with it in your 40s. It will follow you your whole
Mhm.
life. And so I'm just a real big on not allowing that stuff to build up. Let's deal with it directly, deal with it now, and be free.
Yes. Beautiful. And I love we do like a little pre-interview questionnaire thing. You mentioned the idea of going from glory to glory. And yeah, I just love that concept from that biblical concept. And what does that look like for you in your life?
I think that glory to glory is probably healing and authenticity. Like, that is another thing that it's actually easier to be authentic in modern times as opposed when I say modern times, as opposed to back in the Gen X pre-technological days. There was, like a really one way to do everything. Um, we're more comfortable now with being authentic and knowing who you are and knowing, what God called you to do. And for me, glory to glory is really levels of healing from,
Mm.
one stage of your life where you're struggling with this, and then the Lord helps you with that. And so you move on to the next stage of life where you think everything's going to be perfect, but really God's just going to deal with another issue in your life. And
Yeah.
you're going to deal with that. And then you move to the next one. And so much of I think our ministry, our productivity is kind of related to that too, because it happens inside of us, it happens in our hearts, it happens in our minds, but it also happens, in our opportunities to dance, to work, to counsel. God is always doing something new and always going somewhere in a new direction. But to me, the real going from glory to glory is still more of an internal experience than an external one. God just always has a surprise that you didn't
Yeah.
expect. Um,
That's
next. So,
beautiful.
mhm.
Yeah. Thanks for just diving into that a little bit. I was like, I love that concept. And so cool to see how that plays out in our lives.
Even though I haven't been teaching the past 7 years, God has been really sweet in that he hooked me up with the worship department at First Baptist Biloxi, and so they have a very large Christmas show. So this is my 4th year choreographing for that Christmas show. And, like,
Oh,
as a dancer, that's even a glory to glory thing because people always want dancers at Christmas, right? So that's, like, a really big
right.
opportunity to do that, and just even seeing all the like, when I think about all the Christmas things that I've produced in 30 years, and how that's changed and how God makes things easier. Things get easier, things get
Mhm.
better, things get more stable, things get more safe. That's a glory to glory thing too.
Yes. Amen.
Mhm.
Yeah. And on that note, I know we kind of there's been so many good nuggets of wisdom and advice and thoughts for dancers, young dancers. But is there anything else on your heart that you would want to share with fellow artists and those that are listening or watching today?
Probably just pursue what's in your heart, heal yourself. Learn what your boundaries are, learn what you can control, learn what you can't control. Be bold, be brave. I told my husband, I was like, I fail a lot, but it's because I aim high. I am aiming high because
Good.
failure is 100% one of the best things that can happen to you. We learn from it all. Don't take it personally. If you fail a lot, you will learn a lot and you will do a lot of great things. Aim high. Don't be afraid to fail. You're only human. Embrace your humanity. God did not create you perfect. God did not put you in a perfect world. Embrace it. You're human. You're going to make mistakes. You don't know what to do. We're scared. We're fearful, but we can also be brave. We can be both. We can be scared and we can do hard things and go for it. I think that would be my main words to, new people entering dance industry, dance ministry. go for it. If the Lord put it in your heart, go do it. I mean, don't be afraid. As you go through life, you learn the lessons that you need to have to make the choices that you need to make. And enjoy the ride. I think that really I was so stressed out and so worried about so many things. Don't worry. Enjoy your 20s. Enjoy your 30s. Do not worry. Just have a good time. Go for it and enjoy those moments because they just become precious, more precious the older you get.
Mm. Yes, I love that. Thank you. Those are such good words. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you are hoping that we would get to talk about today?
I don't think so. I think
Okay, cool. Just wanted to
that's
make sure.
everything I wanted to say.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I love just getting to ask everyone that comes on the show, what is one of your favorite things right now? So this could be, it's very open-ended, whatever comes to mind.
What is one of my favorite things right now? Audible. Audible, that's my favorite thing right now.
Yeah.
Um, so I loved to read when I was younger, but then, like, once you graduate from college, you don't get to really read anymore. I mean, maybe there's some people that can pull it off, but I couldn't pull it off. I was working, 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 working. The whole work-life balance thing has always been hard for me. That would be another thing that I would say to young people is, establish a work-life balance. You've really got to work hard for those boundaries. Because so many of us dancers are perfectionists and we want to get it right and we're willing to do anything to make it right. And that's not always the healthiest thing. You have to sleep and eat and have time for other relationships too.
So
And
true.
anyway, like that was a rabbit trail.
Yeah, but reading, so hard to
Yes,
read when you're, yeah.
reading, reading. So there's a whole chunk of my life where I didn't get to read anymore, and then I discovered this wonderful thing called Audible, and I have listened to the best fiction, I have listened to the best nonfiction. I, love the algorithms that suggest you things, even
Yes.
algorithms are a miracle to this Gen Xer, and my favorite thing to do now is, I still don't really have time to read, but as I drive my car and I drive my daughter to different places, I don't even know how many books I've listened to, and that has just expanded my mind further. Just, so many perspectives on God, so many perspectives on life, so many perspectives on dance, so much entertainment, you know,
Yeah.
just
Uh-huh.
things for fun. I think I really love learning. So, the Audible's a great thing for me because I get to enjoy it and I learn from it, and, so I'm
Yes,
kind of
yes.
obsessed that's my current obsession is Audible.
I love that. And it's true. It is really nice that we have the technology to be able to listen and keep learning and growing and such a fun. I love that answer. That's really a good one. This has been so much fun. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation and to wrap up our Belhaven Alumni Series with you, Jill. This has been so special. I would love to let people know how they can connect with you, maybe what the best way to connect is, especially maybe if we have some alum that end up listening that want to reconnect with you and get to say hello. That would be awesome.
Yes, I am on Facebook, and I haven't learned how to use Instagram yet. It is a goal of mine, but
No
you can always
worries.
find me on Facebook, and, I do have an email address. I don't recommend that because, it's the same email address I got the year I graduated from Belhaven. And
Love
so
it. That's so funny.
it has lots of spam in it. I message me and then message me to tell me to check my email.
Sounds
Mhm.
good. Perfect.
Yep.
Well, I'll link to that in the show notes. And just so, yeah, thank you so much, Jill. You are such a light and such a gift. So I appreciate the fact that I've gotten to now connect with you and have a little bit of like friendship with you over the internet waves, whatever you want to call it. But so grateful that we've been able to meet a couple times in person, and I'm excited to see kind of where God continues to bring you in the future, and hopefully we'll get to connect up again in person sometime soon. But so grateful for your just words of wisdom today and giving us a glimpse into the very early Belhaven dance days and how like very different yet that heart that's remained the same, I think, over these
Absolutely.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
exactly right. It is very different, but the heart remains the same. You are so right. That's exactly.
Well, thanks. That's how I feel now going back. For me, it's been I was figuring out it's been 13, it'll be 14 years since I graduated when this year graduates, which is crazy to think about, but still feeling that same heartbeat, whenever I go back. And like you said, it feels like home away from home to be on campus. So yeah, well, thank you again, Jill, and look
Thank
forward to
you.
catching up again soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening to the Creative Impact Podcast. The music for the show was produced by Michael Cash. Until next time, remember that you were designed to create. You were made to inspire. Continue living with purpose and making an impact. I'll see you next time, friends.